bookshop. It's the bookshop. It's the bookshop of Beverly Farms.
Howdy, everybody. It is Sam Feifel, your host of John Updike's Ghost, your favorite little podcast about reading, writing, bookstores, literature, and all things awesome. I am joined, as always, by my sister, the co-owner of the bookshop of Beverly Farms, and all-around pink glasses wearing person, Hannah Harlow. How are you doing today, Hannah?
I'm probably a little bit more boring these days than you are. You're just back from a big trip to Iceland. Did you read a lot of books?
I read 2 full books while I was in Iceland. One of them Norwegian themed, since I was in Scandinavia, and I also visited a Icelandic bookstore and poked around. So I was very bookish while I was there, but largely I was hiking mountains and looking at icebergs, which does not leave that much time for reading.
Right, and waterfalls. There were a lot of waterfalls.
There were a lot of waterfalls. I highly recommend Iceland. I would be happy if anybody wanted to reach out to me to let you know how to do Iceland, not cheaply, but efficiently. I would be happy to share our itinerary because it was awesome.
A quick question about the bookstore. What's it like? Are there a lot of English language options?
Yeah. Iceland, everybody in Iceland that we encountered speaks English completely fluently, maybe a little bit of accent. They also speak Icelandic, but, it's just, there's no way for them to make any money without tourists, and the way that they plug into the world is with English. So there are many, many English books in the English bookstore. There were some translations of common books into Icelandic, but in general, there's a good selection of like thrillers that were in English. They had like an English philosophy section, so it wasn't just translated bestsellers or anything.
Great. So
no, it was fun. But let's talk about our agenda. So continuing on that line, I did read the Norwegian book I read I think it's the new Jo Nesbo. I took it off the new pile at the library. It is a standalone, translated from the Norwegian by Robert Ferguson. It is a 2025 book called Blood Ties. It is not like part of the Harry Hole series or anything like that. So I'll talk about that. And the other 2 books I read Kate Russo's Until Allison. I believe that comes out July 15th. And Kate Russo is one of 2 daughters of Richard Russo, who I referenced in our last podcast. And so I also, after I got done with Until Allison, I actually went back and read Richard Russo's debut novel, Mohawk, which I have read before, but it's been like 20 years. So I was like, you know what? I want to see what early Richard Russo, sounded like, because Kate Russo's Until Allison is set in small town Maine, and Richard Russo's first book is set in small town New York. So I wanted to kind of see how they dealt with small town characters in same or different ways. So that was kind of cool. What is on your agenda?
I have also 3 books, 2 memoirs. I feel like I've been reading a lot of memoirs lately.
Wow, you have been reading a lot of memoirs.
I know.
Yeah.
So I have The Saltstones by Helen Whybrow and All the Beauty in the World by Patrick Bringley. So those are the 2 memoirs.
Uh-huh.
And then I also have Kill Your Darlings by Peter Swanson.
Oh, wow. Okay, great. Well, so we have some event-related books in there. Why don't we start with the Whybrow? Because she's coming up soon, right?
She is coming by the store this Saturday, June 21st at 11 a.m. For a little bit of a relaxed event. We're saying it's a meet and greet.
Right.
Just like 11 a.m. on a Saturday. We thought it'd be good for her to just, kind of quietly interact with customers, tell them about her book, answer questions, sign copies, whatnot. I love this book. So The Saltstones is her memoir about being a shepherdess in Vermont.
A shepherdess?
Yes. So it kind of goes through the seasons of being a shepherd and talks about how she kind of came to be on this land. She did grow up on a farm, but then she kind of left and she was working in publishing. She was, I think, an editor at like Norton.
Oh.
But then she met her husband and they had the opportunity to buy this property in Vermont. And they kind of went for it. They see themselves as like stewards of the land. So she talks a lot about kind of their responsibility to the land and how they kind of maintain it and take care of it and try to like help other people by educating them and whatnot. She also became
It
a mother.
reminds me, as you're describing it, of what was the Hare book?
Oh yeah, Raising Hare.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Is it like raising sheep, basically?
Yeah, it's raising sheep and just like the incredible like physical labor of that, and also like the emotional labor of it, and like not all the baby sheep actually get born. Some
You know
don't
where
make
there
it.
are a lot of sheep?
Where?
Iceland.
In Iceland.
There are a lot of sheep in Iceland.
Yes.
It was my favorite thing. The kids said it over and over. So I went, because I was going to be driving in Iceland. I went and watched a bunch of driving in Iceland videos. And there's this one guy that I really liked. And he said, in Iceland, there's a lot of sheep. And, if you see the sheep, just slow down because you never know what they're going to do. And every time we saw sheep, I was like, watch out. You never know what they're going to do. But
did you do all the driving, or
I did all the driving? I did all the driving. But it was like lambing season. So there was all these little baby sheep gamboling after their mama sheep. It was super cute. The little black sheep are tiny. They're amazing. But Gus goes, well, they're born in the spring and you harvest them in the fall. And I was like, oh, is that what happens? And he's like, yes. Didn't you read Charlotte's Web? I was like, yes, that is what Charlotte's Web is all about. You're right. So all those baby sheep are going to get.
Okay, maybe not all of them, but anyway. I think this book is like, it's really beautifully written. It's very kind of introspective. It's also about like, the other books that she's reading and how they inform her life. It's about parenting. So it's about a lot. But I know I never read The Shepherd's Wife by James Rebanks, but I know that's like, I know people like really love that book. I read a book called The Farmer's Son by John Connell, who's like Irish maybe or British. And I love that book. So I think there is sort of this genre of books about shepherding and about like farming life. And I think this like deserves to be in, the list of the great books about.
Nice. What are the salt stones?
Oh, I knew you were going to ask that, and I meant to remind myself.
Is that like the name of the hills behind her? Are they?
No, I mean it's like from a book she was reading, but yeah, I think there are. So you put salted stones out for the sheep to lick.
Okay, right. That's fine.
But there's sort of like more meaning to it. She talks about in the book that I just totally forget. So maybe we'll put that in the notes.
All right. Well, so I don't have a great transition, but we'll stay Norwegian and Scandinavian since we were talking about Iceland. And this is about a guy who he and his brother own like a really nice piece of land high up in this really small Norwegian town, like maybe 1,000 people there. And he and his brother are in there. One of my big problems is that there are many like references to age that don't seem consistent. And it's like sometimes I was like, oh, they're in their early 40s, but then I was like, oh wait, no, they're in their late 20s. It's because a big portion of the action happened in their teenage years, and then we have the current years, but there are also some middle ground years where it wasn't always clear to me, what we're talking about.
Back in time, or if this was still
it's just there's some confusing timeline things which bothered me.
Yep.
So if you've read a lot of Jo Nesbo, it is not a like crime thriller like he does, but there is lots of crime. There's a little bit of a mystery that kind of you're not sort of sure how some things went down. But one of my biggest problems with it is there's that technique of foreshadowing where they like mention a thing that happened and you're like, what? Am I supposed to know that happened? And then like 10 pages later, they like fill you in on what happened on that thing that they mentioned, and it's like, well, like it's just cheap foreshadowing, like I don't I didn't know what you were talking about then, so I just didn't understand the conversation.
Right.
And now I understand the conversation that you had 10 pages ago, but I don't understand why that's good. Like, you know, and then I often had to like flip back and be like, what were they saying again? And then also it's like this anti-hero, right? So the first page, we find out that our first person narrator has killed like 7 people. Right. And so you're like, oh, you know, why do you kill these people, you know? And
Seems
so
bad.
yeah, like I don't really like people that kill other people in general. Hard to like this narrator. And so I think by the end, we are meant to have seen all of these murders as like morally justifiable or unavoidable or, you know, forgivable or something. But basically in every single case, I was like, so you had to kill the dude? Like, why do we have to kill this guy?
Couldn't have just like walked away.
Right. Like, you know, like, so, you know, like, for instance, you find this out very quickly. I'm not giving anything away. Like, the 2 brothers kill their parents by cutting their like brake line. And so they fall off this cliff that is like on the way to their house, right? Like, treacherous turn up. They couldn't make the turn. They just go into this big giant, you know, chasm, smashy, they're dead. And then now in the modern day, they're like exhuming this car and, oh no, they're going to find out that we killed their parents.
But do we learn that the parents were truly terrible parents?
Yeah. So the parents, so the terrible parents is the father is sexually abusing the, you know, younger son. The older son is our first person narrator. And the mother is not complicit, but, you know, is looking the other way or whatever. Right. And like, we're meant to feel better about it morally because the father left a shotgun around in the shop when the older brother was in there. And it was pretty clear that he just wanted him to shoot him. And so instead they cut his car brakes. And
that's bizarre, but
and the mother deserves to die, you know, I guess, you know. So, like, I think each one is supposed to be this moral dilemma, but every time I was like, seems like you could have just not killed that person. And then there's also this sort of love story that's on again, off again because of information that is shared to the woman or not shared and, you know, all this sort of thing. And the whole time I'm just like, what is this woman's attraction to this dude? And, you know, I just don't, guy seems like, you know, he was the best fighter growing up in high school and, okay, great, you know. And I think it's supposed to be like this commentary on small town politics and, you know, where the future of society is going. And just the whole time, I just didn't like anybody. I was not rooting for the first person there. I finished it because I was in Iceland and I needed something to do. But by the end, I was definitely hate reading it. I was just like,
well,
and there's also like 3, you know, it's one of those like false ending kind of books. Like there's like 3 times where I was like, that's got to be the end, right? Like what else is there? And then it's like, oh, one more thing. And you're like, okay, I guess I'll read it.
So the one Jo Nesbo book I read, I was surprised at how graphic it was.
Very graphic. Lots of blood, somewhat graphic sex scenes, not like, you know, crazy graphic or anything, but like definitely, you know, full sex scene. And the violence is definitely, there's lots of violence, lots of, you know, just also one of those things like he gets shot in the leg at one point and then, you know, it's just kind of like rolling around doing his own, you know, it's like, dude, you got shot in the leg. Like you're laid up. I'm sorry. You don't just like patch it up with like a belt and good to go. It's ridiculous. You know. So sounds like it's fine. Is it? Is it like a, you know, it's a cheap read. Like, you know, Jo Nesbo can write, the translator can translate.
Yeah.
Easy read, you know. I don't know.
Right. So maybe there are people out there who like that kind of thing. So
yeah, moral dilemmas. Maybe, you know.
I actually do have a good transition to Kill Your Darlings by Peter Swanson.
Okay, there you go. We're killing people, yeah.
Because we're killing people. And we are also doing an event with Peter Swanson. It is on Thursday, June 26th at 6 p.m. And I will be interviewing him. So I am reading the book and taking notes. Yeah. And so Kill Your Darlings is about a marriage. It's about this couple, Wendy and Tom. And you know from the beginning that they've like done something pretty bad in their past and they're like living with it. So it's a little bit of like, how do you live with this guilt and how do you live with the knowledge
Right.
of this crime?
Right. Yeah. So actually very similar in a lot of ways.
And are you going to get caught someday? Right. Like just that constant like hanging over your head.
Mm-hmm.
So the interesting thing about this book is it's told backwards. So you kind of start like 2019, present day almost.
Mm-hmm.
And things have gotten pretty bad in the marriage. And like Wendy wants to kill her husband. And then you kind of just keep going back in time and you learn more and more about their relationship and like what they've done, the bad things that they've done in their past.
Mm-hmm.
And so that by the end, you sort of have figured out why Wendy would want to kill Tom.
So at the end, does it come back to the present day and circle back, or does it end in the past?
Yeah, problem. I haven't quite finished.
Oh.
I'm 80% done. So we are going to check in on this next time. I was so close, but I didn't want to talk about it.
Fair enough.
So I'm really curious how it's going to end. But I do think he does a really good job of like each time you jump back, you kind of learn something new that is a surprise that like informs what you already know. So it's like sometimes you were saying that cheap foreshadowing. I feel like he achieves the foreshadowing without being cheap about it.
Well, that's hard to do. Yeah.
I think he does a good job of like referencing some things and then you go back in time and you kind of learn what those things are. But it didn't bother me. Like I thought it was well done.
Yeah.
But it did start, I don't know, the one other book I've read of his also had a marriage where they hated each other and they were like cheating on and someone was cheating on the other person and we were going to murder each other. And I was just sort of like, I don't know, that one, it didn't work as well for me. So we started this one and I was like, I don't really like books about,
I know it.
Like married
terrible,
couples,
toxic marriages.
who want to murder each other. Yeah. But in this one, like, I don't know, I thought it works. It works. Like it's a good mystery. So.
That's good. Good. All right. Well, I have a pretty good transition in that Until Allison by Kate Russo does involve some relationships that are pretty toxic.
Okay.
But the central conceit of the book is that we are at a small liberal arts college in Maine, and this woman, one of the undergrads, is murdered. And the main character, first person narrator, saw this woman the night she was murdered. She was maybe the last person to see her. And they are childhood friends who have drifted apart, even though they're both at this school. And it is loosely based on a real life thing that happened back in the late 90s where this woman at Colby College was murdered by a townie.
I was going to say, I saw Kate talk about this book at the New England Booksellers Association Spring Forum.
Yes.
And I believe, so I was going to say it is based on Waterville, Maine, where Colby is.
Yes.
And I believe Kate was there, right, at that time?
She was. So the things that are the same is that she was at Colby when that happened, and she was on the school newspaper editorial board when it happened. So the main character here is also on the school newspaper. She's one of the editors, not the editor-in-chief, but I think she's the news editor. And Kate takes great pains to explain in the acknowledgments that, she is not the main character. This is not the same case. There are no real facts it was based on. It's just like the very basic sort of items of woman dies at a small college in Maine. Main character is the editor at a newspaper. So, everything else is different, we're told.
Yeah.
The home life is clearly, the father and mother are not proxies for her father and mother. The, living circumstances seem different. And so my problem is with the book is, it's set in Maine and it has this very, Maine story at its heart. And she takes pains to make it different, right? It's Waterbury. It's not Waterville. It's Denham. It's not Colby, right? So she shifts everything just this little bit to make it a little bit different. And it sometimes feels like the whole book has been like shifted slightly from reality, right?
Mm.
And like I actually kept a list on my notes app of all the things that are just like slightly off, right? Like at one point they talk about going swimming in the sea. And I was like, I don't know a single Mainer who calls it the sea. Everybody calls it the
Right.
ocean, you know?
Yes, totally.
Or, you know, the characters keep doing that like British thing where they say, do you want to come back to mine? And I was like, I've never heard anybody in Maine say that. They say my house or my place, right? Like they
Right.
never say come back to mine or come back to ours. Like that's just not a thing. Or, you know, it's just like a lot of like little things, or like, oh, they went to the Macy's in Portland. It's like everybody knows Macy's is at the main mall, which is in South Portland. Like, why would you change that? You know, like there's no,
Right.
you know, like, and so there's like, and so the whole book to me just felt like off that little bit, you know, and it made it so obvious that she's trying to tell this story about how women never feel safe, right?
Mm.
And so like all the main characters are women, and you know, the main character's sort of deepest regret is that she bullied this woman who died in 8th grade when she had the opportunity to kind of stand up for her. And it's like, you know, why do we as women and girls feel like, you know, we need to join the popular crowd, which is always people, you know, fronted by boys. And, you know, so there's this message in it about, you know, female solidarity and feminism and, you know, the things that women are forced to do to get along, and why can't boys be accountable, and why do we let boys get away with shit, which, you know, I agree with all of that, but
Right.
it felt so didactic because like all of the other details weren't feeling real to me. Like I didn't feel like
Right.
I was living in the real world. So I just felt like I was being sort of preached to
Right.
by this main character, you know?
Do you think someone who's never been to Maine would notice?
That's what I don't
that?
know, right? I think
Right.
probably not. But then I think it just like, you know, and I think, so that's, anyway, I'm going to just go ahead and transition. So I think that's why I went and read Richard Russo's Mohawk, because I always felt like what Richard Russo did, I talked about it in that Lydia Millett book kind of discussion, is that I always felt like I believed all of his characters. They were like super real, and I knew who they were and I recognized them. And so I was like, has he always been able to do this? Did he, you know, am I making that up? Right. And so
Right.
then I go and I read Mohawk, and Mohawk is about like 1966 New York. It's like small town, like outside of Saratoga or something. And it's very similar. Like it's not a real town. Like it now, as I'm looking at it, it does seem a little cartoonish, right? Like everything seems to have been like turned up to 11, right? So there's like this hospital that's in the town, and it's being moved to the outskirts for a new hospital, but there's all these overruns and they're crazy. And so, you know, only the emergency department of the old hospital is still there. And the kids from the middle school climb up a hill and throw rocks into the unoccupied part of the hospital. And they have broken out every window to the point that when the ambulances come through, there's a crunch of glass, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, so this town is so pathetic that they just let middle schoolers climb up the hill and throw rocks at the hospital, and then they don't clean up the glass when the hospital roads through? Like,
Yeah.
I don't think so. I don't think the town is that lame. And the same thing is like, there's this like town bum that is one of the main characters, and, you know, greets one of the main characters at his diner that he operates. And, you know, there's a poker game upstairs, and all the poker players come down at 6:30, and this guy has lost his shirt, and they do this every Saturday. This dude loses his whole paycheck every Saturday. And it's like, okay. And then another character is such a stumble bum that he goes and does his laundry at the local laundromat, and sometimes takes other people's clothes home. And that's why, you know, the name on his shirt is always not his name. It's like, I'm sorry, if someone
What?
takes my laundry out of that thing and I see him in this small town wearing my shirt with my name, that dude's going to have a problem.
How many people have shirts with their names on it?
Well, I mean, I guess everybody who works at a gas station or whatever in this mythical town, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's like, one of this character's defining sort of characteristics is that he walks around town wearing somebody else's name on his shirt. And maybe it's Cal and maybe it's Steve. And I'm like, so he's stolen clothes from multiple of the other people?
Many people.
Yeah. And it's like, so, I feel like it's a thing that maybe young writers do is they feel like they need to like make everything be this like bright and beeping like detail when we all know that real life is just populated by mendacity. It's just boring. Most of it, you walk up and the stairs are the stairs, and the dude who works at the gas station is just some kid and doesn't have some crazy ass backstory about how he's beaten by his father and whatever. He's just a normal kid or whatever. But that doesn't make for good stories. And so,
that's interesting.
And that's what it felt like. It just felt like everything was on 11, like she has this toxic relationship, the main character in Kate's book, with, this dude who is the chair of the campus Republicans and, ends up cheating on her and like makes her like, they literally go to the crime scene of this, and he like makes her give him head in the car at the crime scene. And I'm like, that's about as toxic a boyfriend as you can have. Like, this is like, it couldn't have been he suggested it. Like, we had to go all the way there, and it just felt like the whole, and like, the terrible things that happened in 8th grade. And like, every single kid dumps their trash on this girl's table on their way out. And I'm like, there's no teachers around? Like, we could just 50 kids could dump their trash on somebody's table and nobody intervenes. Like, this is not like any school I've ever been in.
Yeah, it's a problem. Like, because a lot of fiction, right? Obviously, all of fiction's just made up. But when it gets to a point where you start to like nitpick, like how it would work and if that would really work, and all the reasons why that wouldn't
just takes
work.
you out of the story. I just kept being taken out of the story. Like, and I think the story, like in terms of the, like who did it part of the story, I thought the little, kind of hand waving who done it at the end sort of worked. I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. Like that is how it went down. And it wasn't as big a deal as he thought it was going to be, but it was terrible,
Yeah.
But it was fine. I was like, okay, yeah, you solved the problem in a cool way. And I think it was just about those details. I never felt like I was in a place that I recognized.
Right. All right. Interesting. I have no good segue for my last book, which is All the Beauty in the World by Patrick Bringley. So the subtitle is The Metropolitan Museum of Art and Me. So there's a memoir about a guy who was a museum guard at the Met for 10 years.
Okay.
Yeah. So now I am starting to think about the subgenre of museum guard books.
There's more than one.
Well, I know of 2 novels about museum guards. First, there's Howard Norman's book, The Museum Guard, which is excellent.
Yeah.
And then there's a book by Chloe Regis, and I did forget to look up the name, but it's about a museum guard, and it's so good, but it's a novel. So I think we're going to have to like create a subgenre and find others. So this is nonfiction. Patrick Bringley had just graduated from college. He had started a job at the New Yorker in their like event. I was thinking, people had told me this, like, oh, he worked for the New Yorker and then he became a museum guard. So I was like, oh, he can write, which is how I was selling the book.
Right.
I mean, he was working for the New Yorker for their like events programming.
I was going to say in the newsroom.
No, he was not. He wasn't actually writing for them, but that's okay. Yeah. He's still a really good writer. But his older brother got terminal cancer. And after his brother died, he just felt like the world, like he just didn't want to be on this career ladder anymore. He just wanted to kind of live in the present and just like do a job, right?
I know the feeling. I often have these fantasies about like working at a factory where I just plug a widget in 20 times.
Yeah. So he went and got a job at the Met, and it's good. I feel like there are people who come in to the store asking like, oh, do you know of any books that are like kind of part memoir, but also part like just getting really into a subject. So
right,
like
you learn a bunch of
subject.
Shit, yeah.
So this would definitely qualify because he talks about, the memoir aspect of why he made this decision, what happened with his brother. There are like these moving scenes of like being in the hospital room with his brother during treatments and blah, blah, blah. And also just like how he got his appreciation for art from his mom and blah, blah, blah. But then it's also like you get a tour of the Met and he like does these little dives into different pieces of art and like what they mean and what he gets out of them. And
well,
like,
I guess he also gets to watch people appreciate them. So I would think
there's lots
like
about
all the different reactions. This person, everybody does this when they see it for the first time. Like
there are sections that are like, they're about just like the different kinds of museum goers too, like the people who ingest art this way and the people who do it this way. And the people who it's clear like they've never been to an art museum before. And like, and also just like what you do as a museum guard, like the questions that you're asked and like, people ask him about the artwork and he does happen to know about it, but like, should we expect the museum guards to know the history of like every piece of art? I'm not sure. And his day job now is leading tours, like art tours through the Met. So that's cool. I think that seems really cool. But I just like really enjoyed it. You feel like you're learning stuff. You're learning about like the art itself, but also like how to appreciate art from like, you just feel like he's a normal guy, like, and like how art can be for anybody and how like, you don't have to be an art history major to be able to like talk about art. Like it's okay to be like a regular person and like you get out of it what you get out of it, and that's all valid. So I thought that was a cool aspect of the book and which makes it really good for anybody. Yeah,
well, we are big art museum goers. So we actually went to 3 different art museums while we were in Reykjavik for the Iceland. And I just have to talk about it. So, because I think one of the coolest things is like, some of these are boring. Some of these collections, you're like, well, this sucks or whatever.
Totally. Yes.
But if you ever get a chance, it's a traveling piece and it's called The Clock by Christian Marclay. Have you ever heard of this?
No.
So the materials describe it as one of the most important pieces of the 21st century. And I totally agree. This guy spent 3 years going through films, videos, TV shows, anything that references time and has like an image of a clock or mentions time. And then he created a 24-hour video that functions as a clock, where every time you see a clock in the video footage, it is the time it is right now.
Whoa.
So if you watch, like we got in at like 10:55 and watched to 11:20, there's just constant scenes where they're like, it's 11:15, what are we going to do? At 11:16, we are going to whatever. And it is stitched together so beautifully that like you're never taken out of it. Like you're like watching the hands of a clock move around the face, but it's like in this video representation. And they're like, holy shit, there's Harry Potter. And oh, there's, Robert Redford. And oh, there's, like, so you recognize these scenes and they're crazy familiar, but like, it was so impressive. We were just like transfixed. We watched it for like 40 minutes and we were like, we got to get out of here because we're going to stay, we're going to stay here forever.
We can't stay here for 24 hours.
But it was just, that's awesome. It was so, but like, that's what you never know. We just walked into the museum and like one exhibit was terrible. One exhibit was like, oh, this guy did landscapes, whatever. And then you just walk into this and you're like, oh my God, this is the most impressive thing I've seen in so long. So it's, can't recommend the experience enough.
Well, and I think, the Met is so massive.
Yeah, you can go there every day.
You can go there every day. And I think he does sort of make the case for like, get out beyond the most popular things. Like, go look at all this other stuff that is here. And like, some of it's really amazing.
Yeah. I always think about, Ruby and I were talking about this, is like, where do they keep their collections? There are just warehouses full of art.
Yeah. That's the other cool thing is he like takes you, beyond the galleries. Yeah. Right. There's just cool. A massive amount of people who work there, right? Just like the sheer number of guards is astounding. But then he also talks about like, and there are also the like, the restorers and the curators, all the curators buyers, and and so you do get to see some of the like inner workings, which is also super cool.
That does sound super cool. I want to read that, although I have a big pile.
I know. I stole our mother's copy, so maybe I'll give it back and then you can steal it.
And it was very encouraging. As soon as I posted last episode, Sindel hit me up because she needed to know about the terrible book. And then I went and looked, I had to ask you because I couldn't remember the name yet again.
Yep.
I'm not going to say the name yet again, but then I looked up and like John Irving is like, this is the best book I've ever read. And I was like, oh man, this is terrible.
That's what the publishing industry is these days, is just
everything's the best.
You can always find someone to say something positive about your book. Sorry.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a very cynical view, but that's where we are.
That is where we are. But it was very encouraging. Sindel hit me up via text like a half an hour after I posted it. So she must have been waiting for John Updike's Ghost to hit the airwaves. If you want
to know what book we're talking about, you have to text or email us.
That's right, because we're not putting it out there because it is so bad, and we don't want to be the sort of people who say things are so bad.
I am convinced, as I said to Sam on text last night, that like this book is going to win a big award, and we are going to be like barfing all over the place.
It'll break my heart. I might say something. If it wins a big award, I'm going to object because
I might have to like release some sort of manifesto.
Yeah, I thought I was being trolled. I was like, this can't be real.
This cannot be real.
If it comes out that the whole thing is like a Percival Everett style farce, and instead of somebody writing a fake novel about the Black Ghetto, it's actually a fake novel about rich people in New York, and they think it's hilarious, everybody thinks it's good. If that comes out, yes, I will admire it. I'll be like, holy smokes, that is amazing.
I did actually, because we didn't obviously finish the book or get that far. But one of the descriptions I was reading online about it, I thought, well, this does sound good. Like maybe if I'd kept going. And then I was like, no. It was impossible to keep going. It was too bad.
I didn't think anything sounded good about it. It's all rich people in New York. I'm tired of reading about rich people.
Anyway.
All right. Anyway, I think we've pimped everything expertly because you read the books of the events that we have coming up. This time, I really, really, really am going to try super hard to get the podcast up in time. I will not be in Iceland, so I will not do
no
it too
excuses.
Late, so I won't have any excuses. But
I did a really good job. I did my part.
You did. You did. It's true. Yes. Also, I apologize to anybody. Maybe there were two of you who were big fans of the John Updike's Ghost webpage. It has been drastically reduced in the great web transition. Now there are only 2 episodes on that webpage. But going forward, you will still be able to listen to the podcast on our website and see all the books that we talk about listed below.
And obviously, go to Spotify or Apple or wherever you listen, and the full backlog of episodes are there. You just
won't be able to click on the book titles.
Right. On our website, we had all the book titles listed, and you could purchase them directly from us, but it doesn't seem like that many people were doing that.
It doesn't matter, really. Yeah. So, but whatever. For those, that's what I'm saying. I think there's 2 people who maybe were using that page with any sort of regularity. Yeah. Maybe we'll revamp the webpage further. Should I have some time available?
Hours and hours of Sam's life just got dumped down the drain.
Just burned up. You can't see it anymore.
The bummer.
Yeah, there's 93 episode descriptions up there that have all been lost.
Yes. What episode number are we on? Are we still close to 100?
94 is the one that is live. We are talking on 95 right now. So,
that's exciting.
Yeah, we're getting close to 100. It'll be big time. All right. Until next time, folks. We'll see you later.